Okie doke. So we're now on to the second part of the airbrush video. This part, I'm going to get you to paint out of your airbrush for the first time, which is the biggest obstacle that people run into when they start airbrushing. Stick with it. It might not make sense at first, because when in the original flow of the original video that this was supposed to be, this would have been about well over an hour in. So that's why it might seem like the first thing that I say is that, you know, if you've lasted this long. Then again, the last video is 25 minutes long. You're probably not even gonna watch this one anyway. But if you're interested in the subject, if you're looking to make the jump from rattle cans to an airbrush, that's what I'm trying to produce for you, a series of videos that makes that transition possible, and also makes it easier for you to make the decision to invest in an airbrush. And if that's the case, then I'm gonna have some words to share about you and about how much it improves your experience as a modeler. Because at the end of the day, we're doing this for fun. We're doing this for catharsis, which is like the release of the tensions of the day. This becomes our happy place. And this video, I touch on that a little bit. So really stick with it. I realize I go on forever and ever, but I have a point. There's a method to my madness. Hopefully this renders. This, I think, was the part of the video, the long thing, because I used two separate cameras. I think it's messing up the rendering. Hopefully this will work. If not, I might have to reshoot parts of the video. Which is a shame, because I'm actually pretty funny in this video. So, all right. Without further ado, let's hit it. All right. So if you've made it this far in the video, geez, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it this far in the video. But if you made it this far in the video and you're thinking about getting an airbrush, this is probably the best piece of advice I could impart on you. Make the investment now. Don't go cheap now. Make the investment now in quality equipment and tools. Because if you buy cheap just to see if you're gonna like it, it's gonna annoy you. You're not gonna like it, and you're gonna stop airbrushing. And that's really a shame, because it's a game changer when you start to use an airbrush. A lot of the people that I know still use rattle cans, which is fine. Like I said, I don't judge anybody for anything. But of the people that generally use airbrushes, they tend to stick with airbrushes more than they do with rattle cans. For the reasons that I described before, the control over the material and the control over the spray pattern and the volume of material that you use being that much less. Make the investment now in a good airbrush. GSI Krios, Iwata, Harder and Steenbeck, Badger, Pache. These are all companies that I have personal experience with. I don't have personal experience with Grex, but I hear good things. I don't have personal experience with Gallery, the new one, but I hear good things. I can give a product endorsement of Iwata products and GSI Krios, because they're the ones, GSI Krios especially, they're the ones that I use the most. I can also endorse Badger products because they tend to be very good as well. I have almost no problems anymore using GSI Krios airbrushes and Iwata airbrushes. As far as a compressor, if you're seeing that gimmicky thing on Amazon where it's like a handheld compressor, I have no experience with that, but I can't imagine that is gonna work out well for you, especially as your first piece of equipment in airbrushing. I would invest in a good or decent tank compressor, a compressor that has an air tank, that has a regulator so that you can regulate the pressure. Also that it has a moisture trap. And invest in a good hose that goes to your airbrush. And I would even get the quick disconnects. So in my case, I use an Iwata airbrush, an Iwata compressor. It's this fella right here. I can actually run 2 airbrushes at the same time. It does have 2 regulators. It works really well. It has a tank. Let me move you back over there. It has a tank, and it also has a drain. I'm not going to hit this drain right now because it would be really loud, and it would probably hurt your ears, blow out your speakers. But what's good about that is when you're done spraying after your session, you can release all the air in the tank. This way the moisture doesn't build up and rust out the bottom, which can happen. I mean, there's a dank, dust-filled dungeon over here, but it's rather dry. And just to be safe, I have the moisture traps on the compressor itself, and then at the end of each hose, I also have inline moisture traps. This thing right here. It also has a release valve, so I can release the air when I shut the compressor off. This is on a quick disconnect, so you push this down onto the air hose. Okay, this is also an inline moisture trap. I don't know why I stacked these. I don't know why I do half the things that I do. I got to be honest with you. I forget why I did that. It might have been so that I could hold it like this and have more to hold on to. Knowing me, that's kind of the thing that it's kind of something I would do because I'm out there sometimes, kids. This also has a MAC valve, which I've never touched. So, like I say with the MAC valve, get it to where it sprays nice and leave it alone. Generally, we don't use it unless you want to do spattering. But so I have the quick disconnect. I have a couple of inline moisture traps, and then I have the moisture trap at the regulator. How do you get this thing to work? Well, you take your paint that you're going to use, and you use the manufacturer's recommendation for thinning it. For so many years, I've seen the recommendation to thin your paint to the consistency of milk. What kind of milk? Soy milk, almond milk, 2% skim, buttermilk. Generally speaking, I thin my paint to, at first I start 50-50, 1-to-1, thinner to paint. From there, I really have to add more paint to the mix once I'm at 50-50. Airbrushes themselves are like moving sliders. When you increase air pressure, you need to reduce viscosity and then increase distance from your subject. And at first you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But eventually all of it clicks and you figure it out. And the hardest part in airbrushing is getting to that first point with your airbrush where you can figure out, where you know this is going to spray. It's going to spray. And you know it. And that's the hardest part to get to. And I could show you how to get there, but it's a lot harder for me to do if you're starting with a cheap piece of equipment. Now, there are airbrushes that they sell on Amazon in the $40 range or whatever it is. If it looks similar to the Iwata or the GSI Krios that I've been demonstrating, it'll probably work. You can make it work. You should be fine for a little while at least. But I would just recommend going for more of a name brand like GSI Krios, Iwata, Harder and Steenbeck, Badger, Pache, and maybe even Gallery and Grex, because I hear good things about those. So spend the money now And this way, you know, it's not the cheapness of the product. It's just you got to get the curve down. And once you get the curve down, then everything seems to fall into place. You develop a workflow, and painting becomes fun because you're going to lay down smoothness and crispness of detail is going to remain. And it's just, you look at it and it's beautiful to look at. You almost don't, sometimes like when you prime, it comes out so nice. Like, I don't want to paint that. It looks good. But let's see what happens. We're going to throw unthinned Tamiya X1 down the yap of this airbrush and see what happens. I don't think it's going to work well. I'm going to set it. That's another thing. The operating pressure of your airbrush is set by depressing the air button. Okay? So when your manufacturer, let me bring you up there. Oh, jeez. Oh, here we go. All right, now we should be, let me turn this around. Right now we should be looking at the regulators. They are upside down, but when I depress them, you're going to see this one, you're going to see that needle go down. See it drop off? So now that's my operating pressure is set to about 20 psi. Okay? And then my nominal pressure is in the neighborhood of 25 psi. So that's where I have that set. Now, this is the 0.3 GSI Krios that I use the most. Okay, we're gonna take some Tamiya X1 gloss black, and we're gonna put it onto this poor 67 Chevelle body. Don't worry, buddy. We're gonna fix you up one day. You're gonna look fantastic. Don't you worry about nothing. We'll get to you. I realize at this point I'm probably just talking to myself. Nobody's going to make it this far. If you make it this far, put it in the comments. I'll be your best friend. Send you cards at Christmas. Name my next kid after you. Alright. So that is unthinned Tamiya. Let's see if we can get this to paint. Spray out at 20 psi. I think maybe. Let's see. And nope. That's wide open. She ain't spraying. 20 psi. Let's crank her up. That's gonna put that over 30. See what happens. Now, did you hear that? It's starting to sputter. If you hear sputtering, your pressure is very high and your paint is too thick. It needs to be reduced, and you also probably have to drop your air pressure. So let's see. Let's see if you can hear that. And the paint is starting to come out, but it's sputtery. It's inconsistent. Let's increase our distance. You'll start to see more material getting onto the surface. And right there is when people usually, what the hell is this? I wasted all this money. I'm $65 into a compressor and an airbrush, and it doesn't work. This is a $100 airbrush, and I think this thing was $400. This Iwata compressor. It's the materials and the know-how to get to the point to make it work. So we're going to use the example of Tamiya X1. What can we thin that with? Well, Tamiya has their own, and even though this is Tamiya X1 acrylic, you can thin this with lacquer thinner. You can. I was as shocked to find out as you are. You can use Tamiya lacquer thinner, although I generally don't use Tamiya lacquer thinner. You could use their X20A thinner, the one with the white cap. You could use that. It'll work. You can also use Mr. Color thinner. Lacquer thinner. You can use Mr. Color leveling thinner, otherwise known as unicorn tears. You can use Mr. Color rapid thinner. This will dry slightly not as glossy. This will increase gloss, and this one is just normal thinner. So, wow, I'm looking at this camera. This battery's dying. Might have to switch cameras. You know what? Let me switch cameras now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thin the paint that's in the airbrush. Now, I don't recommend that you just add thinner into your cup, because you could have a situation where, you know, basically the paint that's right in here now might not get thinned. It's not going to get agitated. It's not going to move around as much. Generally, you're better off thinning outside of the airbrush and adding it, but the paint's already in there, so we're stuck, and I ain't cleaning this thing again. So hold on a second, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back with a different camera, because my other camera doesn't have the battery life that this camera has. This camera has... I actually bought this camera that we're watching each other on now back when my daughter was just about to be born in 2013. And we never really used it, and now I'm using it, so it's nice. Finally, it's about time. We would just take pictures of the baby with the phones. So it was a good thing that I bought this. It's a little long in the tooth, but I mean the picture looks okay. So shut up, Frank. You're already about 3 hours into an airbrush video that nobody's gonna watch. Pay attention. Not you, me. All right. So we have our pipette, because we're aristocrats, and you don't just pour thinner into paint. What, did you grow up in a barn? Pinky out, like a gentleman or a gentle lady. And we're going to use some Mr. Color leveling thinner. We're going to put that into our paint that's already in the airbrush, which is highly uncultured and beneath somebody of my stature. But I'm going to estimate how much that should be about. Should be, my calibrated eye says that should be just about right. So now we get the unicorn tears out of danger of getting knocked over. We'll do a little mixing like this. So we've decreased the viscosity, we've thinned the paint out a little. Given this pressure, we should get a little bit better. But what I'm kind of predicting is that we might get a more pronounced sputter. More paint is going to come out, but it still might sputter. And what I'm trying to do is not necessarily paint successfully. I'm trying to reproduce the problems that you might run into with your first airbrush. And I got to remember to look in the camera. I keep looking at the screen. You're not talking to yourself. You're talking to them. Ooh, that's high. All right. So let's paint the front fender, see what happens. Let me wait for the tank to fill up again, so that you can hear the sputtering. Hear the sputtering? All right. Now it's spraying on there, but it's not gonna look good. And you don't want that. You want a nice steady spray pattern. So we're gonna thin that a little bit more. I was wondering why I was getting a little lightheaded. Maybe let's turn on the exhaust fan. Woo! So, we're mixing this. Now, keep in mind, we're also at a very high pressure. I don't want to drop it down too far because, like I said, I still want to have the problem so that I can show you how to get out of trouble. Let me lower that. We're still sputtering more than I want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump out this paint. Let me pause for a second because what I'm going to do is I'm going to flush out the airbrush without cleaning it, just flush it out with lacquer thinner, and I'm going to come back, we're going to properly mix up some paint, and then we're going to get ourselves out of this problem, okay? Hold on a second. Okay, I ran some lacquer thinner through the airbrush to flush it out. It's relatively clean. It's not like we're not changing colors, so you don't really have to go nuts. So what I do first is grab some lacquer thinner. Graduated medicine cup, available on Amazon. I'm going to fill this up to about 2.5 milliliters. Which is just less than a full pipette. So that's just about right. All right. To that, I'm going to add maybe 1.5 milliliters of paint, if that. I've dialed my operating pressure down to 20 psi on the airbrush, on the compressor, and get that in there. So in all, my fluid content should be in the ballpark of 4 milliliters, which is the graduated medicine cups go from 2.5 to and they jump to 5 milliliters. So I'm just under the 5 milliliter hash at this point. So generally speaking, 50-50 is a good 1-to-1 is a good starting point for reducing your paint for spraying. And from there, you rarely have to thicken the paint by, you rarely have to add more paint. You generally have to add more thinner. So, and again, we're spraying out of a 0.3 millimeter needle and nozzle. One of the tests that I do, I spray up against the side of the cup and I look at how it runs down. If it kind of coats the side, you should be okay. If it just runs down and doesn't leave a stain of any type of paint, it's too thin. Alright, that looks combined. Now let's mix it. These Tamiya paint stirrers, they're metal. They're actually pretty good. I like them. I lose them a lot though. They're scattered all over this place. I gotta clean this joint up one day. Alright. Pinky out. Like a gentle person. Into the airbrush we go. Now, let's say, for example, let's say that this is our project and we're working on this 67. Are we going to test our spray pattern on the model? Are we going to test our spray pattern on the model? No. We're going to spray it elsewhere. Because what happens when we test it on the model? We screw up the model if it's not right. And then we're dunking things in degreaser, or alcohol, or brake cleaner, or, I don't know, squid blood, whatever you guys use to strip paint. Test your spray pattern, do all your tests off for your project. That's the mantra. Write it down, get it tattooed somewhere. No sputtering. Hear it? No sputtering. My friend Matt McDougall likes to scream at his compressor. I don't. I like my compressor. You make as much noise as you need to, sweetheart. I would never tell you to shut up. All right, let's go on to the model, see how we do. Did I forget to turn the fan on again? All right. We'll let those fumes go, and then I got to turn the fan off again because it confuses me. Like I have trouble speaking with it on. Not that you have trouble hearing. It's me. It's not you. It's me. Okay. So, generally speaking, you wanna operate your airbrush at the lowest PSI possible to spray the material that you're spraying and still maintain control, because the lower the air pressure, the less material you're wasting by shooting it into your exhaust fan. You want to get as much material onto the model as possible because that's the most efficient and cost-effective way. Generally, when you have that type of economy of material, you also are maintaining control over your spray, which will result in better finishes, less work in polishing, quicker avenues to clear coating, and the same thing with that type of mindset. When clear coating, then you have less work in clear coating and getting the finish to look good. So That said, if that's how you get to your first reasonably successful spray of an airbrush, I mean, dust left and right, but you could actually make something out of this, believe it or not. And I wasn't even trying. You could make something out of this. So that, now, what size airbrush do you buy? If you're like me, and if you're like me, you have my condolences, because you do not want to be like me. But I participate in several genres of scale modeling. I build planes, cars, armor, sometimes dioramas, sometimes horror figures, stuff like that. I generally build cars. I do forays for a couple of years every now and then into planes, but since I was a kid, I've generally been a car modeler. If you're a car modeler and you're only going to paint the body and clear coat the body, get yourself a 0.5 millimeter airbrush. Or you could get an airbrush that accepts both a 0.3 millimeter and 0.5, and then you could do detail work with a 0.3 millimeter airbrush. No problem. You could get that paint down thin enough where you're spraying it at 7 psi and you're going to be fine. So if there's a product on the market, I know Iwata makes an airbrush called the Neo, where you could have a 0.3 millimeter and a 0.5. I think Gallery has one that's convertible from a 0.3. So that might be the way you want to go. If you ever want to... What's the camera telling me? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Camera was blinking something. It's probably telling me to get back on topic. If you ever want to do different things in scale modeling, or take your scale modeling of cars to the next level, like where you're putting exhaust stains on your mufflers and your headers and stuff like that, or you're doing rust effects or patina, I would say it's worth it. Maybe get a 0.2. You don't necessarily have to get the $500 custom micron, unless you're also going to be doing live action illustration work. You don't really need it. I can't imagine you needing a 0.18 millimeter airbrush. So if you want to get it, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with it, but it's not absolutely necessary to do that. The smallest I would go was 0.2 millimeter, and again, even there, you don't need it. 0.3 and 0.5 is basically all you're going to need. So if you get one quality airbrush that does both of those, has the ability to mount a 0.3 millimeter and a 0.5 millimeter needle and nozzle set, go with that one. That's the one to go with. Double action, adjustable trigger, internal mix, gravity feed. Those are the characteristics you're looking for, and that's my recommendation for you. Once you get to that point, you're going to find you're going to rely on the airbrush more than you do on brush painting, more than you do on rattle cans, and it's going to change the way that you build. So, one last problem I'm going to show you that you might run into. And in order to recreate it, I have to loosen the nozzle a little bit, because people run into it a lot. So I'm going to add the rest of this paint. Listen. You might even be able to see it. I don't want to tilt it back too far, because then the paint's going to fall. See it? So if you have that symptom, and you could even have it if you have a siphon feed, don't get a siphon feed. There, I said it. I expressed an opinion. Yeah, if you have a siphon feed or a gravity feed, if your nozzle is loose or if your nozzle is dirty, you're going to get bubbles. So if that's the case, tighten your nozzle. If that alleviates the problem, you're good to go after that. No big deal. No harm, no foul. If it does not alleviate the problem, then that's because your nozzle's dirty. You're going to have to take down your airbrush, field strip it, and clean it. Which you should do on a somewhat... Yeah, the sound is gone. It's not spitting anymore. Hold on, bubbling. That's gone. Alright, so... How often should you clean your airbrush? Well, you can't go by the way I clean the airbrush after every painting session because I like doing it. You don't have to, but I like, it's like I have fastidious things about me. I like cleaning the airbrush. You don't have to, but then again, I've seen people, it's on some, not even YouTube videos, I think it was on Facebook. There was paint caked all over the outside of the color cup. The inside of the color cup was like 6 different colors of paint. And I just started twitching. I was like, you got to clean that thing, dude. So there's, you know, you'll feel when it needs to be cleaned. You'll definitely know. And generally speaking, you should clean if you switch from solid colors to metallic. And especially if you're going from metallic colors to solid, you got to clean the airbrush. Because those little specks of metal flake, you got to get them out of there. And you should do like a pretty good breakdown and get everything out of there that you can. Going by the segment that I did. Get as many materials as you can that you think are going to help. I'm going to link to everything that I use down in the description. I'm going to link to where I get my airbrush stuff. And stick with it. It adds a lot to the hobby. And the one thing that we're trying to reach by building models, at least for my part, is catharsis. You want to get to your happy place. For me, over the years, I'm in my happy place in this spot right here, within the 15 feet from one desk down to here where my stash is and where I paint. This is my happy place. I hear my family upstairs walking around, and it's just like, this is what I picture. If heaven's like this, then I'll be happy. You know what I mean? Catharsis. I'm reaching my happy place, and airbrushing does so much towards making that possible. And I'm going to go into more of the philosophical aspects of model building when I'm not high on Lackathina fumes. So let me finish up here. I'm going to clean the airbrush, and I'm going to sum up. And then this thing should probably only be about 6-7 hours long. Boy, I can go. Let me tell you, if I get on a tangent, I can go. All right, let me clean up. Wow, that escalated quickly. This thing's probably going to be close to an hour and a half. God knows how long it's going to be. So, if you made it this far, you deserve a medal. But if you get anything from this video, it's this. Double action. Internal mix. Gravity feed. Adjustable trigger. 0.3mm to 0.5mm, or both. Name brand from beginning. Compressor with an air tank. And a regulator. And a moisture trap. And quick disconnects make your life easier. That's what you need to remember. Clean more often than not. And clean if you're changing from metallic to solid or solid to metallic. Or if you're going from a dark color to a light color, clean it. Rinse it thoroughly in between colors that are similar, as the case may be. Practice off your project. And more than anything, what I hope airbrushing brings you is that. That's the most important part. It's the reason why we build. So, look at that. Until we meet again, my friends, take care of yourselves and be well. And I'm really sorry for this being so long. Take care.